All right. So, first of all, I'm just going to say, who am I? What do I do? I'm not an engineer. I am not a. I don't. I'm not someone that works for Intel or someone that designs architectures. But I have been doing PCs for many years, and I myself would like to think, and I'm sure many would agree, that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to these topics. And so I'm going to discuss something that I feel like needs to be discussed. I'm going to look for a document real quick on my OneDrive. It's going to be under random documents. So it's going to be not this one. Not sure if I still have them. Okay, it doesn't matter too much. Because honestly, we don't need them. We don't really need the documentation because it doesn't matter. Frankly, it does not matter because I don't think anyone really knows how to read the documentation anyway, because there is no real I don't know, there's no real flow to it. It doesn't even seem to make sense from Intel's perspective. So let's just recap. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have watched Twitter, or sorry, not watched Twitter, seen on Twitter. A lot of you guys would have seen on Twitter a few weeks ago that there was some talk about Intel CPUs crashing in certain like Unreal Engine 5 games and stuff and whatever. And then there was like, videos by different people, and there was comments and posts and blah blah. And okay, um okay, so I just need to first say that, like, most people, I don't really know why, but it just seems like people don't have a grasp of what's actually happening. And I can't really understand why, because it's not exactly the hardest thing to grasp. What am I doing? Okay, so so first of all, we have to look at the spec page, so we understand the basis of the issue, and then we'll look at things logically. So first of all, size 16. Okay, so which one? It can't be oxide breakdown. Why not? So the only option is electromigration. Now, why does it happen? When does it happen? When does the degradation happen? It's not during gaming. It just isn't. Why? There is not a single game on Earth that is going to push an Intel CPU, unless it's like some sort of modded game. I don't know, that you just messed with to make it run higher current. I don't know, but no game on Earth is going to push the Intel CPU to like 250, 300 amps. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It isn't going to happen, right? So the current load isn't high enough. There's no game that's going to run the CPU past Intel spec. It's just not going to happen, right? So um, when does the degradation happen? The degradation happens during shader compilation, random updates and downloads, and any portion of AVX code. What is the Intel spec we should care about? That's it. That's the only thing we care about. Why? Because, again, like I said, you're never going to run there. End of story. That's it. Okay. So I don't care what you think. I don't care what your position is or what you think you no. You don't. You're wrong. You're just wrong. Like if 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 you don't agree with this, then you're just flat out wrong. This is it. This is the truth. We've already seen when chips have degraded. When have they degraded? Okay, well, I'll give you some scenarios. Um, Scenarios. So wait, hold on. Let's put it there. Scenarios. Okay. People disabling. God bless you, Hemu. People disabling eCores and running up to 110C in Linpack extended at 300 plus watts to break gigaflop milestones. This is fucking retarded, but this happens. God bless you, him. I love you, bro, but this is retarded. Well, this happens, so that's the first case, and you see that shit often. You see that shit all the time. It's like, well, not all the time, but like, yeah, all the time. In the overclocking community, all the time, people do this shit, and they just, like, with ever AIO, look, maybe you have AIO. I mean, it happens. If you might have a custom loop, maybe you get away with a bit of murder, but I mean, um, like scenario two, custom loop slash exotic. No, not exotic cooling. Let's just say custom loop slash like. Yeah, maybe say exotic cooling for like a chiller. Exotic cooling user decides to go all out and run Prime 95 SFFT at 450 watts to prove he can. And there you go. And then the chip just loses like 25 millivolts after X amount of time and whatever. I mean, yeah, chip's not running too warm, but like, I mean, 450 watts gonna catch up with everyone. Like I said again, the current load doesn't matter because at 450 watts, you already know the current load is gonna be too high. So it's like it practically doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the current load is. It just matters what the wattage is, assuming the wattage reading is correct. So if you know the wattage reading is correct and it's too high, you're probably screwed. So it's like that's practically speaking, is all we care about is the wattage, because the scenarios where it's like super low, well, not super low, but like moderate current, but like crazy voltage, is kind of like rare. Like, why would the CPU be running at like 1.55 volts at like 150 amps? Like, it's just like, how is that gonna happen? You know, like, what are you doing? You're trying to run COD at like, 6.5 gigahertz. Like, what are you doing? I don't really know like what would cause that. But anyway, um, and I mean, I'm sure like as your clock speed goes higher, current goes higher, it's just impossible, dude. Like, worry about the wattage load. The wattage load pretty much tells you exactly what's happening and if you're screwed or not. If you stand at 253 watts, you're fine. Like, you're pretty much fine in every respect. Now, the problem is BIOS makers don't set spec. That's the issue. When you build a PC, you're already in the danger zone. Why? They don't follow Intel spec even with the P cores. So, if we go back to Google, notice the i9's turbo frequency. This one's the one you care about. You don't care about these. These forget about. In fact, let's get the 1200K in here, because we're gonna go do a bit of history lesson. So, do you guys remember that the 12900K actually had a 4.9 gigahertz all-core turbo in 8 core loads, and a 3.7 gigahertz e-core turbo? Intel spec is 5.1 and 3.9. The vendors looked at the spec and decided that it would not be stable on like 90% of chips at reasonable stock vids. And the truth was, they were right. So we all had our i9 shipped to us with 4.9 and 3.7 the moment we boot up the system, right? And guess what? No one had issues. The 12900K was a very, very stable chip. These two chips, for some reason, the vendors have taken it upon themselves to pre-OC your chip by one boost bin, right? Forget these numbers, they're non-factors. This is the one you care about. When you run any application on an i9-13900K at default, right, with the stock BIOS, you are going to be running at 5.5 gigahertz with a 4096 watt limit. The spec calls for 5.4 gigahertz vid point on the VF curve and a 253 watt limit on maximum turbo power. So the 1400K calls for 5.6. We see 5.7 on our boards, like Morgan's board that I tuned in December. His chip is 5.7 by default, as is everyone else's, all of you guys watching this video. If you have a 1400K, I'm not talking about the KS, I don't worry about that now. I'm not going to touch on that. Let's focus on the base processors. But yeah, so the 1400K is 5.6 somehow. It's somehow 5.6 on Intel spec, and then when you boot up the system, it's 5.7. Fuck knows, I don't know. And this 253 watts is just, it never gets implemented, it never gets respected. You are booting at 4096 watts. It means that when you run a heavy application, what typically happens is your chip's gonna run up to like maybe 300 watts until your cooling solution, which is probably an AIO in most respects, is going to begin to no longer be able to sustain the watt load as the liquid temp increases. And then eventually it'll equalize, and maybe it'll equalize somewhere at like 280 watts of dissipation. Your chip's running at like 100 degrees, flat, pinned at 100 degrees. And yeah, so you're at 100 degrees, you're at like 280, 290 watts, whatever your AIO can dissipate, and you are slowly degrading. So that can go on for like months, and eventually you've shaved off X amount of millivolts. And that's how it happens. That's how it happens in, I guess, most cases where it happens. Apparently it happens in a day sometimes. It could happen in a day. If you're doing shader compilation and it takes like, I don't know, half an hour, I mean, yeah, you could lose like 25 millivolts in half an hour. It depends. It is what it is. Maybe your chip's shit. Maybe you have a crappy silicon. Maybe it's just bad silicon, bunch of cracks in it, and you know, and it's already shit silicon, and then, you know, this happens, and then all of a sudden it's even worse silicon. So that's what happens. That's how it goes, guys. That's how it goes. Um, the 3900K and 1400K VF curve targets 5.5 and 5.7 respectively. It disrespects Intel spec, and the 4096 watt limit seals the deal. So that's what happens. Okay, that's what happens. You're not degrading in game. You're not degrading on desktop. You're not degrading idle. You're degrading under load. Um, the reason degradation happens is because of this limit being set. Um, the 4096 watt limit is the primary issue. Um, so that's something you have to understand. Um, and yeah, that's kind of it. So this is how it happens for most like tuning users, and then this is how it happens for pretty much the average Joe, right? Um, what can you do to fix it? Well, two options. You can either set a manual, set a manual configuration and test it for stability. So whether you're going down a clock step, whether you're going to add voltage, whatever you're going to do, obviously you want to still maintain the Intel. Yeah, obviously you want to obey Intel 253 watt spec unless your chip is super cold. So what I mean by that is, if you have a really good cooling setup, and you can, for example, maintain 253 watts at, like, I don't know, 65 degrees, then you can probably maintain 300 watts at like 85 degrees, maybe. Maybe 80 degrees. I would say if you can maintain like 300 watts, but like under 80 degrees, you probably are fine. You can probably, well, I'll just make a breakdown. I'm going to say like under, so let's say under 100C, 253 watt limit. Under 90C, let's say like 265 watt limit maybe. Under 80C, gonna go like maybe like 290 watt limit. I don't know. And then like under 70C, you know, then you can start playing. I mean, if you can really run like, yeah, I mean, if you can really keep the CPU at like under 70 degrees, you know, at like, I don't know, whatever your target clock speed is. Obviously, it depends on the target clock speed because of the voltage that'll be required for whatever clock speed it is. Whatever, you get the point. Whatever your target clock speed is, if you can maintain like under 70C in like whatever you want to test is heaviest application. I don't even want to do like Y Cruncher SFT or something. I don't know. Maybe you can run like 300 watts ish, but like, I mean, probably like more like 320 maybe. I'd say like 320, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. It depends. Like, whatever you feel comfortable with, I guess. Like, me personally, I would say like 300 watts, or like, let's say even 310 watts. But like, um, like a lot of people are gonna be like, no, let's do like, you know, 350 watts or 400 watts. But like, I don't know. Look, man, do whatever you want to your hardware. But if it was me, if I was maintaining 70 degrees of load, I would say I think 310 watts is like, you know, I'd say like if you can run like a 310 watt load under 70 degrees, it's fine. Like it's probably safe to run like daily. Um, so yeah, I would say like this is probably, in my opinion, probably safe. Like I mean, my opinion. That's obviously I'm not an Intel engineer. Like maybe you think I'm like full of it, but in my opinion, like this is what you can probably run like safely. Like I would say if you had this setup and you were like testing at 310 watts and you told me you were getting 70 C temps, I would say like you're probably fine. Like so that's kind of what I mean. So and then two would be to limit CPU to correct 253 watt limit to prevent further electromigration, but add voltage small steps until stock VF point is stable. Okay, now what do I mean by small steps? I mean 25 millivolts to 50 millivolts should be enough and will not cause any issues even at idle, because the odds of it being higher than 1.5 volts on the stock VF is practically zero. Idle should probably never exceed. That's my personal maximum. I would say like 1.5 idle is probably like the most I would ever want to see an idle. But anyway, whatever. Um, okay. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's everything. That really is everything. There's nothing more that needs to be said. There's nothing more to explain. That's it, guys. That's really it. This is all. Like, um, this explains it in a nutshell. It should make sense to everyone. Um, you're like, this is it, guys. This is all. That's all there is to it. It's not more complicated. It doesn't. There's nothing more to think about. There's nothing more to stress about. It's nothing more sinister than this. That's all it is. It's just that when you have the limits at 4,000 watts, inevitably everyone's going to buy an i9, is going to buy a 360 AIO, and a 360 AIO in most cases will only equalize the heat load at like 280, 290 watts. So what's going to happen is it's not going to bring this, it's going to run 100 degrees and it's going to be pinned at like 280 watts, 290 watts. Depending on how long you do that for, yeah, yeah, when you're running 280, 290 watts, 300 watts, I've seen some like gamers, Nexus and stuff, and hardware and box say the coolest like dissipate 350 watts. Dude, nah, like if you have the limits unlocked and your i9 is literally pinned at 350 watts, running at like 100 to 105 degrees, whatever, I don't know. Yeah, like you should know better. Like you should just know that that's not good. Like you should know better. Like the i9 spec is 253 watts for the i9-13900K and the 14900K. This is literally all the CPU is good for, and it's pretty accurate. It's pretty freaking accurate, dude. Like if you're gonna hit 100 degrees, stay under this limit. I implore you to stay under this limit. If you're gonna be at like 90C, chilling around 90C, I would say like 265 is probably fine. Extending it by like 10ish watts, it's not a bad thing. Like it's not gonna cause any real harm. Like I think 265 watts is fine. Um, around the 90C mark, probably pretty chilled. Maybe like 1% more degradation than, I mean, I don't know, but probably not anything you're worried about. 80C is where I would say you can maybe start considering like 280 to 290 watt load. I mean, I'm still not a big fan of fan of like this kind of load, so I would probably say like let's say like 254, 100 degrees. Let's say like straight up maybe like 285 for like ADC, and then we can say like 310 is probably I mean again I'd say more like 300, dude. I don't even like 310, bro. Like I don't know, dude. Like I don't know why you'd need to run like more than 300 watts. Like 300 watts is a lot of power. Like I mean, I guess some people want to run like tests at like, like they want to run them like 3 boost spins above the stock. I don't know. Like, some people want to run like crazy speeds. I don't know. Whatever. Like my personal opinion, dude, is like if I was running 200 watts, I would only feel safe around like 70 degrees. Like 80 degrees really is not that low. Like if I was at 80 degrees at like 285 watts, I'd be like, this is pretty like pretty much like as much as I want to do. When I hit 300 watts, man, I would want to be like cold. I would really want to be cold. 350 watts, dude, forget about it, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, just forget about it. Like, that's stupid. But yeah, I mean, well, it's stupid if you want to keep your CPU like, healthy for a while. But I mean, whatever. So, yeah, guys, that's it. That's the video. I hope this makes sense. I mean, it should make sense. There's really not much to it. So, yeah, that's it, guys. Cheers.